Professor Gomez, were both, dear brothers, had known long before we got into this panel discussions, many years ago. It's been a great pleasure participating in this forum, and I'd like to thank again and salute the work that GK Partners and Professor Fall is doing. It takes a lot to bring all these people together and do it every year. The money that is required to do it, the energy you need to do it, the patience, the creativity, all the troubles you get into to bring people here, it takes a lot. So really thank you very much for the opportunity. And thanks to one more time to the Minister for giving an opportunity to the diaspora to participate in the work that the Ministry and through the Ministry the government is doing on higher education and research. Because the advisory group that has been mentioned is mainly of diaspora, Gambians in the diaspora, who are contributing from wherever they are. And in this conversation we had in the two panels on higher education, tertiary and higher education, a lot came through. And I think what is striking in both panels was actually the energy that was in the room. For me, it was the energy was just such that, we could have gone on for the whole day and even have gone on another day again. And there were a lot of young people who showed up in the panels and in this forum, and I think that is really important. So the energy and then a demonstration of the creativity and the amount of innovation that is already going on. We had a lot of, young entrepreneurs, young leaders from the Gambia, just giving examples of what they're doing. Some in the diaspora, some right here in the countries, demonstrating that it is possible to do it and do it well in this country, and that there is a future here. I think that's the most important thing, talking about migration and elsewhere, to get people to reconcile, to come back to the idea that we can have a future here, and a future that has nothing to be envious of any other, place in the world. And I think that has been very important. And we've got demonstrations of that. Innovations, people training software developers, software engineers, chefs for the big restaurants around, all kinds of domains, from the relatively so-called soft ones to the really, at cutting-edge technological spaces. Gambians are there already, and they're doing it. And all they need probably is just for the environment to be more conducive, to be supported in what they're doing. The conversation on higher education was very important. I'm just trying to run through a couple of points that came through the two panels. The first point to say about higher education and research was a point that I think Professor Sen made it very well at the beginning of the second panel, when he explained that there are a lot of misperceptions. First of all, when you talk about higher education, the tendency is to think that, universities are, ivory towers, they are disconnected, or they are almost like expensive luxuries, particularly for developing countries. And that's a misperception, and it's a dangerous one. And for a time, actually, Africa for 2 decades was being, taken on a false ride to say that we don't need higher education. What we needed were skills to, do jobs for the factories and for people coming to invest. And what we needed of higher education, we were better off sending our kids elsewhere for them to study. Now, after 2 decades or so, they came around full circle to say that actually there was a miscalculation from every point of view, including from the economic point of view. Because the argument was to say that the rate of return of investments in higher education were lower than the rate of return of investments in basic education. So all that thing has changed. So those misperceptions we have to deal with. The second misperception, which also was in the discussion in so many different ways, was that of consisting to say that because we're a developing country, what we need are the STEM and the technical training that is required, the technical subjects, and that humanities and social sciences do not matter. Now that is a mistake. That also has been demonstrated. And again, the best example that was given was when we had the TRRC, people needed to understand how come this country that was supposed to be peaceful, we were saying that certain things were un-Gambian. And then it turned out that people were doing horrible things. How did that happen? To make sense of that, they went to look for a political scientist. Sen and others were asked to try to explain. The South Africans went through the same process. After the transformation when apartheid was formally ended, they invested heavily in the science and technologies, centers of excellence in sciences for a long time. The NRF, they have an elaborate research support system. And then they realized after a while that, look, they were missing something, that the trauma of the experience on the apartheid wasn't something that techniques can resolve. You needed other things. You needed the philosophy, psychology, other disciplines that help you understand the human being better. Right? So we need all these disciplines. We need a comprehensive system when we're talking about higher education, science and technology. Then, of course, the third point that was made was we have to look at what do we need, what kinds of institutions do we need. We need institutions that are Gambian, that are well-grounded in our context, that are rooted in our soils and in our history and cultures, but that are also of international standards, that are world-class, and or at least that aim to become world-class. And the experience of how UZ was being built was given, and that was a very interesting experience. They looked at different examples, Ghana, Nigeria, and other places, and then came up with, say, okay, how do we, out of this, mold something, fashion something, craft something that is actually Gambian? But that also doesn't err on the side of, say, quality, to say, look, the quality is substandard. And for that, the importance of NACA, the quality assurance body, was emphasized. We had somebody from the group in the conversation, but a lot of the speakers came back to it, that the role it is playing is very important. We have to make sure that the standards are upheld, that they're kept, to be as high as they are. Of course, once you've got the kind of institution you needed, then we thought about the missions of the universities. Here, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Gambia took us through a very interesting conversation of what are the missions: teaching, research, community service, and all are important. Teaching not only the STEMs, but also the social sciences, but also values. What are the things that we want to transmit in our cultures, in our languages and so on, that we want to uphold, that we want to preserve. And the research is actually the bedrock of the university systems. I mean, people in the academy are promoted not on the basis of what they can do technically, but also on the basis of what they publish, based on their research. So for that reason, research is very important. And you do research and you take it seriously when you create a mechanism for its reproduction in the system, which is where you need to have master's programs, graduate programs, and PhD programs, which is where the training really takes place, and postdoctoral programs, and ways of making sure that you have also, of course, research centers in all the disciplines, so that the research can be reproduced. And of course, we are in a world that is changing so rapidly. The demographic issues that have been mentioned in the previous presentation, and all the things that are happening, make it important for us to keep track of the changes that are happening, and there are rapid changes at every level. The environment is changing, the economies are changing, the cultures are changing, technological change is so rapid. We have all the revolutions together in our context. The artificial intelligence is here, and we still have serious issues of access to electricity. 600 million people in Africa don't have access to electricity. So we need research continuously to keep track of the trends. And therefore, we should be reasoning in terms of a systemic a system to put in place that is differentiated, that works on several legs, and not only is hinged on only one particular pillar, but that is comprehensive. And therefore, we need to be reasoning actually in terms of an ecosystem with all the things that matter, the legal issues, the technical issues, institutional issues, so that we have a system that works. And then, of course, we continue the conversation to say, we need to also, both in the teaching and in the research, think about what our needs are in this country. It's about food security, it's about jobs, it's about a lot of other things. And take that into account in the programs that are designed for the universities, and make sure that we address those needs in the teaching. We address issues related to the job market. A job market that is evolving, thinking about the future of work. There is a whole set of research around the ILO on the future of work. The future of education. There's a whole program. UNESCO came up 2 years ago with a report on the future of education. You cannot train somebody now only to be one thing. You need to train people who can adapt to this changing world. But all this, to bring all this together and keep it relevant and important, we need to have, therefore, transformative institutions. Because ours is a problem of how do we get out of underdevelopment and move to what we can call a developed world. From the third to the first world, like Singapore and others have done it. Of course, it will not be the same first world anymore, because we're talking about a world that is also where some of the issues of the First World War, as you know it, have been resolved. But what that means is you need a vision, that's at the macro level, at the country level. You need a vision, you need a sense of mission, and a commitment to the achievement of that mission. Every Gambian should see themselves as being part of, or having a role to play in what will take us out of the current problems we are and to the future society we want to build. I'm just rounding up very quickly. What it means is we have to be very committed to that transformation and see that we can play a role in it. We need to have a culture of entrepreneurship that came up in several presentations. Somebody actually said it very beautifully. He said, entrepreneurship is the vaccine. It's the vaccine against the backway, against a lot of the problems. But of course, it's not the only thing that we need to do. A final point I want to make has to do with the diaspora and the role of the diaspora in all this. The diaspora is a huge resource that is underutilized right now. And it's not only about the finances, actually that came in the plenary presentation earlier on. It's also about all the kinds of resources that the diaspora can get the country to have access to. It's the talents, it's the contacts, it's the networking, opportunities for students to study abroad. I mean, Professor Sall gave a beautiful example of how many students they've been trained at this university from here. So the diaspora is also a possibility for publishing together with Gambians, increasing the amount of publications coming from here. It's a possibility for improving our research, for developing curriculum. It is also a way to create a lot of things here. And what we need to do is to have something as simple as a registry of the diaspora, particularly the diaspora who are in the university systems outside, so that we know when we need somebody to teach in a particular area, we're not looking for a person. And then, of course, to create mechanisms for facilitating the movement of the diaspora, fellowships, and including a program like that of the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellows. I can go on and go on, but the final point had to do with the resources that are needed to get all these things to happen. We can rely on what is coming from our partners, and the goodwill is there. We will get money from development partners, from philanthropy, from remittances and so on. But there has to be an important contribution from within the country itself. Domestic resources need to be mobilized to support our tertiary and higher education institutions. Therefore, the government vote for higher education and for the ministry must increase. It is ridiculously low as it is now. I'm saying it, I'm sorry for using that language, but it is not fair, honestly, to have a university, to have an institution, or institutions actually, because there are quite a number of them now, that have the ambitions that have been assigned to them, and that are playing such a critical role, and yet when you look at the budget, it's not even the budget of an important international conference that we organize. So the government should prioritize higher education and demonstrate it. In Senegal, 40% of their national budget, annual budget, is devoted to education. 40%. It's far beyond the average that is set for. Of course, we've seen the details how it is used, it's another thing, but they devote 40% of their budget to education and higher education. So the vote has to increase. And then there are other mechanisms of financing education and higher education and research from within. But let me just stop here because I see I'm abusing of the patience of the chair, and I'm very sorry for having taken this long. Thank you very much for your attention.